Good afternoon and welcome to the Mission Critical Insights series. I'm Drew Spaniel, the founder and director of research at Mission Critical. Mission Critical is an organization that facilitates collaboration between academia, industry, and government to develop and disseminate interdisciplinary, peer-reviewed technical and non-technical research that is focused on improving critical infrastructure, security, and resilience. Today we are joined by Joyce Hunter. Joyce previously served as both the acting CIO and deputy CIO of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and held other senior leadership roles within the federal government, ICIT, Lotus Development Corp., Lawson Software, and Computer Sciences Corporation. She's managed multi-billion-dollar IT budgets and established or led several government data governance and PMO initiatives. She understands how to communicate with and across diverse communities and how to forge relationships that enable those stakeholders to succeed. Joyce regularly uses these skills in both her TEDx talks and publications. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you, Drew. I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. Today's topic is why you should care about food and agriculture cybersecurity. This is a topic that Joyce is more than an expert on, and I think anyone who has spoken with you on the topic would agree.
Absolutely. I'm passionate about making sure our food supply is secure from dirt to table.
As I well know, having worked with you for a number of years, our first question today is, how do you define the food and agriculture sector for a broad audience who may be unfamiliar with it, or at least unfamiliar with it in terms of critical infrastructure?
Well, actually, food and agriculture sector refers to the interconnected system of activities related to the production, processing, and distribution and consumption, like I said, from dirt to table. It is a critical infrastructure that plays a fundamental role in sustaining human life and well-being. Last time I checked, we all ate. I mean, if anybody doesn't eat, let me know, and I will have them thoroughly examined. So this sector encompasses a wide range of activities from farming, fisheries, livestock production, food processing, transportation. A lot of people forget about how to get it from point A to point B, storage, and retail. So that's why it's a critical infrastructure, because everything is interconnected.
And I think that leads into our next question, which is, why should critical infrastructure owner and operators, legislators, and other stakeholders care about the security and resilience of the food and agriculture sector, both those in the sector and those outside of the sector?
Well, it's essential for several reasons, right? So you have food security, establishing stable and sufficient food supply to meet the nutritional needs of the populations. And there are several things that causes civil unrest. One is not enough food. That will cause migration and, people to move and, causes all kinds of problems, especially when you get into the global food security issue. And you have people moving from country to country, and a lot of the customs and culture is not the same. Then you have housing and just personal well-being. So, of course, with food and agriculture, having a sufficient and stable and safe food supply is necessary. Economic impact. Just think about this. Agriculture is a significant contributor to the economy. It provides employment, income, and livelihoods for a large population of the a portion of the human population. The sector also supports related industries such as agribusiness, food manufacturing, and transportation. Then, of course, there's health and nutrition. Without healthy food, you don't have healthy people. And you can't have sick people going to work. And you find that people who are not feeling well, who do not have the right dietary perspectives, then they get sick and take off of work, and that's not helpful for anybody. Supply chain resilience. If you're talking about getting from point A to point B and all the transportation that's involved in getting there, then you have to look at things such as natural disasters, economic challenges, and public health emergencies, like COVID that we just had a couple of years ago, where you could not actually go to the store and get a lot of the supplies because, there were no truckers. There were no people in transportation, folks, to get people from point A to point B. Then you have to look at the environmental impact. What are we doing to our earth? We're talking about climate change and all the things that it's doing to the growth, production, processing, and delivery of food. So we have to recognize that the critical nature of the food and agriculture sector really underscores the importance of strategic planning, investment, and collaboration to ensure its resilience and sustainability. I mean, food is a cornerstone of human civilization. Keep asking the question, how many of you don't eat? I mean,
Right.
it's integral to meeting the basic needs of populations around the world.
I think that's a great answer. What threats would you say plague the food and agriculture sector most, and what steps can we take to minimize the risk from those?
Ooh, how much time do you have? um, oh, well, a wide range of threats. I'll try and, shorten it a little bit, but it can impact production, distribution, and safety. These threats have far reaching consequences. Public health, that's the first thing, economic stability, and national security. So some of the key threats are biological. You have disease outbreaks. Diseases affecting crops, livestock, or fisheries can lead to significant production losses, plant infestations. Because we're a global economy, pests travel now. I mean, it used to be way back long time ago before we had, jet travel and all these other kinds of modern conveniences, we call conveniences. Pests stayed in their own domains, in their own countries, but now they just hop on the plane with everybody else
Right.
and spread their insects, fungi, and other pests. Um, Food safety and contamination, and that can be done by the pests. Fraud, so you have people, doing things to putting, I guess, putting plants and animals together that really shouldn't be for economic gain, and they can pose a risk to the consumers because they are advertised as one thing, but they're not.
Right.
Um, and then you have, like I said, climate change, floods, hurricanes, wildfires. Uh, I can't even begin to imagine from the fires that have occurred in Hawaii, how that's going to affect, and the floods that and the hurricanes that have been occurring in Florida, how that's going to affect the prices next spring on our fruits and vegetables that we're
Right.
going to have. Of course, there are cybersecurity attacks on agricultural databases that can compromise sensitive information. There's a lot of data that goes into the Chicago Board of Trade. And if that information, which comes from the farmers out in the field, we tried to, and when I was at agriculture, we had a program that hoped that the farmers would use it out on their farms to keep them from having to drive 2 or 3 hours each way to the county office and submit their crop yields. But that can now be hacked because they
Right.
all the machines have GPS on top of their things. So yeah.
Right. And I think that that risk of cyber physical sort of impacts is maybe understated. And that kind of leads into I guess our next question, which is, you know, uh the sector itself, food and agriculture, is often and maybe very unfortunately underappreciated and underfunded. We all rely on food, as you said, but I don't think people actively consider it as a sector when they're buying things and or cooking things. It's just sort of out of sight, out of mind in a sense. So, but perhaps even worse than that is I don't think you know, many, especially of the younger generations, consider it sort of an interesting area to sort of gear their careers towards. So,
Not cool.
right, exactly. And especially, layering on with the present risk of cyber physical as we automate more, how do we interest the younger generations in going into both something like cybersecurity, which is already a challenge, but then pivoting from there deeper into the cybersecurity of the food and agriculture sector?
um First of all, we know that there's going to be a increasing number of people on the earth. 50 million, 50 billion people by the year 2050. That's not far away. I mean, just think about it. This is 2023 already. So we're thinking about a lot of people globally that we're going to have to feed. And fortunately or unfortunately, people look at the United States as not only the global negotiator, but also the global breadbasket.
Right.
And if the population, we're not in an agricultural economy anymore in the United States. I think that there are probably less than, in fact, I know that there are less than 2% of the American businesses that are in farming. You have the large producers, but the individual farmers are necessary in order to supply a lot of the large producers. So you can have, say you have a large sausage company. I'm not going to mention any names, but you have large sausage company, and they buy their fennel from a small supplier, mom and pop, which is typically what happens. And so there's the large supplier could potentially be covered. You know, they've got all the cybersecurity protocols in place, but when they are importing or including this small business, they're not covered.
Right.
So the the bad guys will try and come in through the weakest link, and that's typically one of the small suppliers. You know, my belief is that the large suppliers, the large producers and ranchers should cover the small guys. You know, they should include them in their cybersecurity protocol. And yeah, a lot of, in fact, none of these kids know what Beverly Hills and Green Acres are. So, and I always refer, agriculture is not like that anymore.
Right.
You know, we're not going to hitch you up to the back of a mule and have you, run over 40 acres. That's just not possible. There are so many cool things. If you go to the University of California, Davis, that's where they have their agriculture and natural resources research. John Deere has in Ames, Iowa, has their research lab. One of my former camp kids works there in developing the actual programs that sit on a tablet, and you can plug it right into a planter or to a tractor, and it self runs. It's just an autonomous vehicle. And by the way, folks, autonomous vehicles didn't start with Tesla.
Right.
Autonomous vehicles started in the 1940s because there were so many men away, farmers away for World War II, that John Deere developed this autonomous tractor for their farming community. So agriculture was way ahead of Mr. Musk.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I think our food and agriculture sector leads a lot of our sectors, and I think, especially with drawing in cyber talent, it might be a great way to sort of exemplify methodologies to do that. And maybe that's
Mhm.
a deeper topic for another time. But I noticed there that you mentioned your camp, Joyce. So I think I know, a great deal about your camp, and it's something I follow every year. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about your summer camp programs and, how they can both contribute to those or, apply to have their own children and rising generations, uh, you know, get interested in topics like cybersecurity and food and agriculture.
Absolutely. So when I was at the Department of Agriculture in 2014, I'm coming up on my 10th year. I had to really kind of sit back and think about this, but it's absolutely amazing. President Obama came out with a open data initiative, and so everybody's moaning and groaning about agriculture and data analysts and where we're going to get the talent from. And I suggested perhaps they would want to create a program for underserved and underrepresented youth. I was looked at like I had three heads. So I decided, well, if nobody else is going to support me, I'm going to go ahead and support myself. And I came back to the Department of Agriculture, and both the CIO at the time, Cheryl Cook, who is now the Deputy Secretary for Agriculture in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and Dr. Gregory Parham, who was the Assistant Secretary for Administration. They said, go forth and do, but we don't have a budget. So I worked through all of that and started by the first iteration of the camp in July of 2014. And it's called Science, Technology, Engineering, Agriculture, and Math. And we have done that since we did it the first 3 years at USDA. And then when the administration ended, I took it with me, and we have been holding it at the University of the District of Columbia ever since. And this is, like I said, going on my 10th year. I've had 390 students come through the camp. Some of them have actually taken agriculture science, but mostly 10% of the 390, 400 students have actually done something with data science. And as part of critical thinking, when you have to do that, and a lot of educational institutions do not do critical thinking. You
Right.
study to take a test, and that's no. In order for us, the United States, to maintain our economic and our innovative initiatives, we have to have these kids think differently. We have to have these kids think out of the box. What other kind of pests? Think big. Interestingly enough, and I know that you're a computer science major, Drew, but they have said that humanities majors make better analysts in cybersecurity.
Right. Yeah, I was a STEM major, but I one of the things I value greatly was that I went to a humanities undergraduate institution that really heavily focused on sort of an interdisciplinary approach and sort of curating both critical thinking and problem solving, but also, facilitating that across different perspectives and things. So I paid a great deal for that level of education, and I think that the fact that you are offering, that kind of perspective and sort of training and that kind of reasoning to, younger generations and especially those underrepresented or from, impoverished backgrounds like I was,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really inspiring, and I definitely think it's something people should take a look at and, sort
It
of
is
look at your
free.
model. Right.
And it's free. The camp is free. So for 2 weeks, you can get your kids out of the house. You can get them to learn something different. Like I said, 10% come back. They beg to come back for a second year. And sometimes we put them to work. All of my facilitators are college students who used to be students. So
Right.
now they're in college, they're doing these great things. And even if you don't decide, one of my students, she is a graphics arts. She wanted to do digital marketing, and that has a lot to do. Department of Agriculture has a agriculture marketing service.
Right.
So how do you market to other farmers? How do you get the word out about programs that the USDA has? And so there's a lot that needs to be done. We need to start earlier. My camp starts at 14 to 18 years old. You can always start a little bit earlier, but for my camp, and as far as dealing with analytics and creative thinking and standing up and making complicated ideas simple, the first question I ask the students is, why should people care about your topic? And the topic is hunger and poverty, or food safety, or other topics that would interest young people their age.
And I think that's a great parallel for our topic today, which was why should you care about food and agriculture cybersecurity? And I think you expertly answered that question. Thank you very much for joining us, Joyce. And thank you to our audience for sticking around and watching this interview. And I hope that you all both learned something and that you take a look at Joyce's initiatives. They're really inspiring, and I'm very grateful for her mentorship and fellowship within Mission Critical. Thanks a lot.